We got to break Cereba up. Cereba is a cartel. We have to own our grid because we paid for it. You had it too long. That's number one. We need to control the purchasing of fuel because we pay for it. We should be in charge of buying it. The fuel companies, you better buckle up too. Jackson Point pipeline have to be reverted back to the ownership of the country. Oh, Mario, you can't tell them how to operate their business. Well, yes, we can. Having this idea that you're going to impose what's best because of what the law tells you can do will cause an uprising in this country that you've never seen before. My children are going to be saddled with the debt of a billionaire so that he can have his name printed on everything we got around here. Because, let me tell you something, this is Dart Island. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Word of Mouth. Today is Monday. I want to say it's the 21st or the 20th. Forgive me if I got my days all messed up. But today's 20th of March. Just kidding. Yeah, there's been quite a bit of things happening within the community, society, government, around the world. A lot of different things happening. So we just want to touch on a couple of the most important items, and obviously those are the ones that affect us here in Cayman. So there's a host of things that we need to stay focused on, and a lot of people don't normally get themselves to a position where they have the time to pay attention to most things. But certainly, unfortunately for me, I have insomnia, so I sleep very little, and I think a whole lot, and I read a lot, and anyway, it's just one of those things. But certainly, the reality is that we got to pay attention to our surroundings. Otherwise, we'll get trampled. We won't be able to know how to deal and go about things on a day-to-day basis. So certainly we need to pay close attention to what's happening within our environment, what's going on in our society, because believe me when I tell you, one of the most unforgiving things is when you don't know what's happening before it's happened, and then you pay the ultimate consequence of being reactive. Now, there's one or two topics I want to start off with, and it's very serious. And it should be prioritized from a government standpoint. Certainly, I'm going to still reach out to Kenneth to try and get his attention in regards to a few things that I've seen happening right before our very eyes, and it's largely because we depend on a lot of revenue that comes from work permit fees, trade and business licensing fees, licensings at the licensing department. A lot of these things contribute to our GDP, and I totally understand why government allow these things to happen. But I think that it's imperative that we have proper structure so that we understand for one, who's involved, the process of that involvement, and what the outcome will be at the end, and how will that outcome impact the overall picture of what the Cayman Islands want to be. Now, the reason why I say that is because of recently we've seen where a lot of these scooters that are traversing the roads now have become, pretty evident that they're everywhere, right? I don't particularly have anything against the people who own these things, right? I just have a problem with how we have implemented it. They just up and saw some stuff online, saw a good idea to make some money, bought it, went to trade and business license, got a license, and they have these things all over the road without any proper regulation. First of all, let's be very, very clear, right? That any vehicle that is self-propelled, that has its own, that can mobilize, that can move on under its own power, have to be properly inspected, registered, and licensed and insured to be on the roads. Somehow we have taken the sidestep approach and turn a blind eye approach to when it comes to bicycles and scooters and these little handheld scooters. And I don't have anything wrong with the bicycle riders, other than the fact that most of them are not properly educated and they come from condensed population regions where they think that they can just ride in the middle of the road with no consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a serious problem. And I can tell you that specifically because I had a near tragic incident yesterday evening around 6:45 minutes to 7. And I share this story because I think it's imperative because the person who riding the bicycle is a doctor that works at Doctors Hospital, a German doctor who's supposed to be smart, at the very least, supposed to have a little bit of common sense. But this man is absolutely careless and disregard of the driving public. Now, don't get me wrong, I have loads of awareness and a respect for bicycle riders simply because they're already at a disadvantage because they don't have a iron steel cage to protect them if they were to fall or get hit by a car. I get it. We need to be very, very conscious of the fact that they're very vulnerable because of the lack of protection on a bicycle or a scooter or a motorized bicycle for that matter. Doesn't matter. And motorcycles. But the thing that really blows my mind is how someone that has a doctorate degree could be so stupid. And I use the term stupid because I can tell you what he did yesterday was absolutely mind blowing, right? And because I know Dr. Rado very well, I'm not going to call the doctor's name, but I can call Dr. Rado later on and I can let him know to point out to that doctor. Under no circumstances should he ever feel like he owned the roads and ride as if he's careless and people need to develop this Nostradamus and predict the future and what he's going to do because he's on a bicycle. All of a sudden, he becomes exempt. Listen, at the King's Roundabout, he was coming from Georgetown off of the Limpert Pearson bypass, I presumed, coming from work. He takes the inner lane. I'm coming from Hurley's direction, heading into town. I'm in the far left lane. There's a truck in the right lane next to me. We both know that roundabouts are giveaways. So when you look to your right and you see no cars coming and no one has indicated to come that direction, you cautiously move on to the roundabout to go on to whatever your destination is. Now, this person at 6:45, granted it's almost dark, wearing a dark gray shirt and a dark brown pants, riding a bicycle on the inner lane, decides he's going to come on the inner lane and go into Old Crew Road without any signaling, no gesture, no lights, no nothing. No one can see him. And I can tell you, he came within inches of getting knocked off that bicycle by myself and the truck next to me. Then he goes on. When I looked at him, he looked at me and he flips me off and curses me out. I could read what he said. So I chased him down and I pulled him over and I said, look, under no circumstances should you feel as if drivers that are paid to be on this road have to read your mind. I said, for one, we didn't see you because it's dark and you're in dark clothes. You don't have any lights on the bicycle, and you're in the wrong lane. You're in the inner lane going to the outer lane exit, to the first outer lane exit. You should have been on the outer lane because had you been in the outer lane, we would have saw you. And then don't get ignorant and irate the fact that you almost got knocked down because of your fault. The problem is that our government has systematically done stupidness like this before in the past where they just let things implement themselves, regulate themselves, and go on. The problem is when you look in the traffic law, you see where the bicycle have entitlement to be in the road and you must give way. I get that. I don't have a problem. Hence the reason why they build a bicycle lane. Now, if anyone knows all roundabouts, is the bicycle lane on the on the inside lane? Is there any bicycle lane on the inside lane? No, there's not. So this educated doctor didn't take the time to understand these roundabouts and then decide he's going to disrespect people who pay to be on the roads and go on like a complete idiot. But anyway, I put him in his place and I'll go further because I will make sure that he understand what he did yesterday didn't only jeopardize his life, he jeopardized my life. He put me at risk and at danger. Because let's just say I had swerved from hitting him and ran into a light pole and broke my neck. Who would be to blame? Oh, we didn't respect the bicycle rider. No, the bicycle rider didn't respect us. Because the same responsibility we have to be respectful of them, they must have the same responsibility to be respectful of us who drives on the road. So at the end of the day, the government need to strike a balance here. They need to make sure that there's some sort of proper regulations in place for people who traverse the roads. All right. Then we go to the scooters, the little stupid scooters that we allowed them to set up on every sidewalk along the West Bay Road, the busiest road in Cayman, right? And we allow children to get their parents to use their debit card to rent these scooters to ride up and down the road. And mind, it only a matter of time, God forbid, that we don't become reactive to this thing, that we be proactive and put proper structure in place to prevent this from happening. Those scooters should only be ridden in private areas, not on public roads. I've witnessed for too many times. In fact, last year I was driving down West Bay Road and a girl and her boyfriend, she fell off of her scooter in front of me, in front of the Ritz Carlton. Had I not been paying attention or didn't realize that that was going to eventually happen when I saw them up the road, I probably would have ended up hitting her by complete accident, but it would have been my fault because I hit a person on a scooter. The reality is that the government need to ban those scooters from being on the main roads or the sidewalk system or in the bicycle lane. Those scooters don't belong in the bicycle lane. The bicycle lane was specifically allocated for the people who ride bicycles. Now, don't get me wrong, the people who ride bicycles in Cayman need to be properly educated that they're not in their country of origin where there's no laws or policing of these things. A lot of these people come here and they act like as if they act in their own country. They bring their cultural behavior here and we allow it. And then we try to adjust laws and constitution to accommodate it. And we need to stop that. So at the end of the day, do we wait till one of our children die on one of these scooters before we put proper regulation and stipulation in place? Those things should only be ridden between certain hours of the day and within private property. Now I'll say this about the Camana Bay establishment. They need to get a handle of the children riding scooters in and about the Camana Bay area because it's only a matter of time, again, God forbid, that one of those children or somebody who's on these scooters in the Camana Bay where a lot of people are walking with their families and most people have young children that they hold in their hand. What if one of these kids on these scooters get out of control, which I've seen one ran into the window at Agua. Thank God nobody was it was there. I witnessed that with my own two eyes. The problem is what happens when one of those children end up hitting one of those young kids and end up hurting them to a point where it's irreversible? Do we then do something? So I reach out to the DART organization to put a stop to those scooters riding in and about the areas of Camana Bay. That's not a part of your live, work, play. I'm sorry. Putting people at risk of being injured or, God forbid, death by allowing somebody to run up and down on a scooter who've never ridden a scooter or anything in their life, it's just unbelievable. They need to put a stop to it. And I'm sorry if the people who invested their money in these scooters don't understand. I just thinking that we need to put a stop to it. Those scooters should only be used in controlled areas where there's no population, especially with people walking them down with their 2-year-old child holding hands, and then all of a sudden somebody comes out of the wind on a scooter out of control. It mightn't even be their fault and end up hitting that child and creating damage that you can't reverse. And then what do we say? Oh, well, if we had known, well, you know, in Manhattan, they ban them in Manhattan on the sidewalk because they were killing pedestrians on these scooters. But we allow them here as if they're okay. Not to mention a couple of the cars that I see them allowed come back. I see these little three-wheeler cars with no roof, license insured, and people driving around on the main road on these things for the sake of the almighty dollar. But these things need to change. And far as I know, Kenneth is in charge of transportation, and he need to do something about this. I tried calling him several times, but I can't get a hold of Kenneth. You know, before election and before he became minister, you know, he never missed a day at Full of Beans. He was always there. Never missed a day. Never not answered his phone. But all of a sudden now, he don't answer the phone. And one can argue, oh, he got a lot on his plate. Yeah, but he had everybody got a lot on their plate. Answer your phone or call people back. That's the least you can do. That way you're elected to do anyway. But anyway, the bottom line is that, you know, we have a very serious issue in our country and we need to address it before it gets to the point where something happened that is irreversible. We already seen where a electric bicycle rider got killed 2 weeks ago right in front of Queen's Court by a person. I don't know the person. I don't know the details, so I try to refrain from saying anything. But I know that the person got hit, and the person left the scene, and then was later subsequently arrested for hitting and hit and run, whatnot. The reality is that that could have also been prevented if that person on that bicycle had known, or not on. Let me rephrase that. If that person on that bicycle had a set of bylaws or requirements of riding that electric scooter on the main road, he probably wouldn't have been in the road. He probably would have been either on the sidewalk, which is also dangerous, or in the bicycle lane allocation. Now, granted, when you have a person, and I'm speaking hypothetically, who has been impaired by some substance of liquid form or whatever, and driving down the road, it doesn't matter what zone you're in, because they'll end up running off the road and hitting you whether you are in the road or not, right? But I've seen people on electric bicycles weaving in and out of traffic with no brake lights, no indicators, no headlights, no nothing. So how is the driver supposed to know what their intentions are when we see them coming in our rear view mirror? How, if they don't indicate? Because they don't have indication. But at the end of the day, this is the sort of thing that we allow. If we put strict regulations to say if you're not in the bicycle lane, you can be penalized for being in the road, where you require roadworthiness, insurance, and licenses. End of story. Government need to specify that the allocated bicycle lanes is specifically for non-licensed and insured vehicles that are not self-propelled. They need to, if you have an electric bicycle, you need to get it licensed and insured, and you need to make it roadworthy. End of story. Anything that can travel over 25 miles per hour by a motor, and that's motorized, it need to be licensed and insured. I'm sorry. Might be a tough pill to swallow, but they need to swallow it. You're not saving the world by riding a motorized bicycle. I'm sorry. They come with lithium batteries and they plugged into a diesel generator. You're not helping. You may be getting from point A to point B quicker because of traffic. That may be the only benefit, but that's it. So we need to stop kidding ourselves and telling ourselves that these things are going to fix themselves, because they're not. It's going to get to a point where it's going to be detrimental, and what do we do then? So we need to be careful what we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen, especially when it comes to dealing with the traffic and the road and these things, because at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones that pay the price. And sadly, the families that have to go through the incident will be the ones that pay the ultimate price. We need to prevent that from happening. Now, a couple of things that's happening within the, we see where um, we had the cruise ship association had a delegation here, and they were traveling out, going looking at various things and ideas and what the government want to do. And obviously, the BRAC was a center focal point of their visit, where the BRAC is going to build a dock out there, so maybe it can accommodate, have some cruise tourism going there. But at the end of the day, you know, cruise tourism looks for product. They look for activity, things that you can provide. And if if I mean, obviously the BRAC has the potential to be many things, but there's a lot of things that the BRAC don't currently have. And I think building the pier is building a new docking facility is a good step. But they also need to look into other things that they can put in there. So, but at the end of the day, we have a lot of different things that comes into play when it comes to tourism. I don't have a problem with us accommodating a delegation from the Cruise Ship Association and all its key partners. I really don't. But what I do have a problem with is that we don't even have a proper structure in place that identify what our product is, what the value is, what the price structuring is, and who benefits from it, right? Because in the past, the Cruise Ship Association and the cruise lines have strategically, you know, captured the tour market by making each person hedge bets against each other. And the problem is when you got this thing called pre-booked tours. Pre-booked tours is a horse trading game between all the tour operators. And the cruise lines have taken advantage, full advantage, because they'll go to a tour operator and say, we offer you, and I'm speaking hypothetically, we'll offer you $15 a head. We'll give you 600 people a day at $15 a head. Now, in on the surface, that sounds like a great idea. That sounds like the numbers make sense. But we have no clue, we have no idea, we have no power to know what they're selling it for. We just know what they're willing to pay us. And that's where I have a huge problem, because for far too long, in fact, not for far too long, for the entire existence of the cruise line coming to our shores, they have been a they have been an issue with the lion's share going to the cruise line. Now, granted, I don't really care what a cruise line charges their customer. As a tour, as a Caymanian who, if I was in the tour operating business, I don't really care what they charge. We need to focus on what it is we see that is as a value for us to make enough money for it to make sense for us. We take all the responsibility. We have to provide liability insurance. We have to provide life vests. We have to pass inspection and safety from the port authority for all our vessels when we're doing tours, whether it be on land or water. We take all the liability. Then we take the responsibility of the individuals that come on our tour. We're responsible for them under these things, right? And the cruise line, they sell the tickets on shore, on the ship, sorry. They pre-sell them. That's why they can pre-book you. So as a community, as a tour community, as an operating arm of our tourism product, we need, and I know that we got a lot of different personalities in there, and I've spoken to a lot of people who work in the tour operating business, in the bus and the boats and whatnot. The problem is that we haven't really been able to form a complete alliance of what we feel the value of our product is. And I know some of those guys out there know what their value is, and they charge what they want independently, and they get whatever business they get, and they don't get what they don't get. And that's how it works. But if we have a standard bar of what a Stingray City tour costs, a snorkeling at Cheeseburger Reef costs, a snorkeling at the Kittiwake costs, diving, and all these different things, if we have a mandate, a clear price range and price points for each tour, and each operator gets exactly the same thing, then the cruise lines can charge whatever they want. We take the ability of them being able to hedge one operator against the other. And I've seen it many times. So we need to, and what I mean by setting a bar, we need to say, okay, every hour and a half trip to Stingray City, and I'm speaking hypothetically, I don't know how long the trips are, but every hour and a half trip to Stingray City, it is $75, $80 per person to do that trip. I'm speaking hypothetically. These are numbers I'm just throwing in. I'm trying to create a picture so you understand what I'm saying. So we need to say, okay, we getting $80 a head, Stingray City back each trip, right? If the cruise ship want to charge 9,000, that's not our problem. They want to charge 200, that's not our problem. We need to set a point where the price impacts us positively. We need to set a price point where it makes sense for us economically, and that we can survive and generate our own personal wealth, and not let the cruise line hedge each other against each other so that we out there. But why you think you see people out there with signs walking up and down to Georgetown about tours? You know why? Because they don't have any pre-booked tours. It's because the other big tour operators have the pre-booked tours. They people go straight on a bus, straight to the tour, do their activity, come back. They get prepaid. And this is how the product has become watered down, because we allowed the large operators to sell it for little or nothing, which disenfranchises the small operator who charges regular prices, who need to charge a little extra because they got the small end of the stick. I know one time Makiva had started the co-op, and of course, that didn't last because the people who run in it. I don't know what took place there. I don't want to speculate. I'm just simply saying it didn't work out the way that it had intended to work out. But they need to reinstitute something very similar to the co-op, because that was a great idea. That was a good step, and and I believe that one of the reasons why we haven't put that structure in place is because of the heavy influence that the cruise lines have over one, the government, the major operators, and then you see the major operators who enjoying the mass business from the pre-booked tours. They too will lobby for their official members to keep things the way they are. That's the problem in Cayman, you know. That's the problem in Cayman, is that where we've allowed the system to dictate over the years how it run and how it maintained. We never really come back and do a full assessment to see whether or not everybody that's in that industry is getting a fair share of the pie. No, we've never done that. Excuse me. We've always allowed the big business to control the narrative and control how these things work. We've always allowed it. And people don't really understand the true impacts until when you look at one side of the fence and look at the other side and you see which grass is greener, and you understand why, because these are the things that systematically happens and we allow them to happen. If the system isn't currently working for the best interest of everybody, then we obviously have to agree that we need to change the system. So at the end of the day, things are very, I mean, it's totally out of control when it comes to that particular industry. I had written an article a couple of years ago called "The New Pirates of the Caribbean," and I was talking about the cruise lines because they come in the Caribbean basin, they loot and they take all of our the lion's share of all the tours and operations, and then they hightail it out of town. Now, if that's not the essence of piracy, I don't know what is. And then the locals are left behind scrambling. So, and even though I admire Kenneth's ambition to accommodate the Cruise Line Association, but Kenneth need to understand. Kenneth, and not only Kenneth, the entire Department of Tourism need to understand is that is that we are the prize. They're not the prize. We are the destination. They're not the destination, which they tell themselves. A lot of their commercials say we are the destination. Garbage. That's just a marketing strategy. We are the destination. We are the prize. 60% of all the revenue generated in the cruise industry comes from the Caribbean basin. Facts. So, as a tourism minister, that is that is whining and dining the cruise lines people, my only meeting with the cruise association would be this, and all of the key players. Listen, we have just come up with a new formula on what all of our tours and product costs, and these are all of our operators, and these are the prices that we charge. So therefore, you have to now equally pick from each operator, and these are the costs. This is the cost of all these tours. Now, whatever you charge on the ship is your business. We don't have a problem with that, and we'll do our best to accommodate everybody whom have been booked through this. No one can be booked outside of this. You can't go outside of this. This is our price point. These are our operators, and these are the people you need to use. End of story. That's the last conversation you need to have with anybody in the cruise line, because the cruise lines doesn't pay to maintain our roads. They don't pay to maintain our beaches and our environment. They don't pay for any of these things. All right? So we don't need nothing else from them other than the fact that they understand what the value of our product is, and that they're gonna pay it if they're gonna call to this port. And they don't have a choice to call to this port. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I try to say to Kenneth all the time, and everybody that's in that. The Cruise Line Association do not have a choice about putting us on the itinerary. That's a fact. That's by compulsory. Cayman is one of the most desirable locations in the Caribbean. Not the most, but one of the most. So therefore, the Western itinerary is only because of the Cayman Islands. So we need to stop acting as if they have everything we need. No, we have everything they need. You know, that brings me to a conversation I had with a wealthy individual in Cayman who became very, very complacent and started disrespecting people, me in particular. And he's a foreign national who chose Cayman to be his home of destination. And I had to remind him when he went on and flipped off. I said, hey, listen, pump your brakes. I said, let me remind you of something. And he's so courageous. I said, what? Tell me, please. And I said, I don't live in Detroit. I live in the Cayman Islands. I said, where do you live? He said, I live here. I said, well, all right. I say, isn't that not a clear indication that We have what you want, and what you have, we don't want because we don't live in Detroit. You live in Cayman. You felt the need and the necessity to leave Detroit to come here. So we clearly have something you want, and you have nothing we want. So please be respectful. Please be understanding and be grateful for where you live in. Because you're not living where you're from. You're living where I'm from. And when you tell people things in that manner, they smart ones get it. But the reality is that that goes back to the cruise lines. That goes back to how do we negotiate with them? Now, first thing the ministry would say is, "Oh well, you can't go in there with this attitude because they won't come." Listen to me. They not they not going nowhere else. That is the problem we have, ladies and gentlemen. We as a people, we as a government have told ourselves that we need them to tell us what to do. We need them to participate for us to exist. That's not true. They need us to exist. 60% of their entire revenue base in the cruise line association or in the cruise line industry, right? 60% of their revenue come from the Caribbean. They are not sailing past us, my friend. In fact, they lining up to come here. They lining up to go to other Caribbean islands. You realize that the same Genesis and Oasis size ships that they claim would never tender in the Cayman Islands, they would pass us by. And we had even merchants on this island. We had merchants on this island that were out there advocating to build a cruise pier to accommodate ships that they claim were going to pass us by. Now they lined up in the harbor, parked, tendering their ships. Every single cruise ship day, they're out there. But I don't hear these little puppets that they had running around here talking about they were going to pass us by. They ain't passing us by now, are they? And matter of fact, why we had a whole entire delegation from the cruise shipping associations from every one of the major cruise lines. We had a member here that we entertained in the last couple of weeks. Why they here? You know why they're here? Because Cayman is an essential part of the Western itinerary. They have to be here. They ain't going nowhere. I just hope that we didn't sell ourselves short. Believe me when I tell you, they're not going nowhere, Kenneth Bryan. You're the Minister of Tourism. The cruise lines need the Caribbean islands. The Caribbean islands just need to recognize what they're worth. They need to recognize their value and stop selling themselves shorts. And let me tell you something. My vision for the Caribbean, and I wrote it in my article, I said that we need to form an alliance. All Caribbean islands need to form an alliance and set the standard. Because if we got every Caribbean island on board into a commitment, into a union that simply says this is what we value, how many people in the cruise line is going to be able to go up against that? Because if all Caribbean islands are working on the same term sheet, and 60% of their revenue comes from the Caribbean, they what are they gonna do? What are they gonna pull the plug? 60% of their revenue comes from the Caribbean basin. And if the Caribbean basin got in tandem and got in order together, we control this thing. We can then generate the right amount of revenue for the people who are in the industries that take care of the tours and all of the activities that go on onshore. But no, right? If we ever accomplish that, then checkmate. Now, if a cruise line see the need to buy an island, why an island didn't see a need to buy a cruise line? Tell me. Fifth financial center in the world. We got all of these institutions that managing all of this wealth in Cayman, and none of them ever recommended to take the pension fund and buy Fortis, which owns 51% of CUC, buy a lot of the major companies that are controlling all of our utilities in Cayman. Why none of these institutions haven't recommended that? Or maybe they have. And maybe it fell on deaf ears because politicians are self-serving. These are the things that we need to talk about. Anybody ever asked the question, why is it that we have almost $3 billion in pension and every dollar is invested overseas? But yet government lays out a red carpet for inward bound investment. We encourage inward bound investment. We go We go above and beyond and bend over backwards until we break some time to accommodate inward bound investment. But we have allowed our $3 billion in pension to go overseas and overseas investment vehicles. And then we got these few pension providers in Cayman who controls the wealth of our pension. And we have no control and no say over what our pension be invested in. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think you all really understand what's taking place in Cayman. Our pension got in $3 billion, and we got a mother sleeping on the beach, bathing her children in a public bathroom, and sleeping in the car. Tell me, how that makes sense? How you can't see that something is fundamentally wrong with that scenario? $3 billion in pension, right? I don't know how many pension providers we have here, 5 or 6, I don't know. I won't call any of the names, but we all know who they are because we have to pay them by compulsory. And how is it that we haven't taken a strong look and made affirmative action into making sure that that money is being properly invested? Water Authority is an authority, it's a publicly traded company. We can buy shares. Why Water Authority not fully owned by the people of the Cayman Islands? Why CUC not fully owned by the people of the Cayman Islands? Why majority of Digicel and Flow not owned by the majority of the people of the Cayman Islands? Hey, not because we don't have the money. We got the money. Pension got the money sitting in it. Anybody have looked at the pension statement to see what investment vehicle your money is in and what the performance is? And if you're happy with it, well, you could be happy or not. You can't do nothing about it. You can't write your pension provider and say, hey, can you take 10% of my pension and invest it in this particular stock? Why we don't have control over where they invest our money? But yet, I know one of the people who own one of the pension houses sitting at a restaurant table in public, and you know when people drink, they talk, and you know that alcohol is the truth serum, telling people he got $100 million in his bank account. So I wonder if it's $100 million of our money or is $100 million of his money. So we need to do an independent audit to find out whether these pension providers' administration costs exceeds the profits that investment vehicles yield based on a quarterly report. We need to investigate this because if the administration fees is higher than the investment vehicles returns, then Houston, we got a problem. Yeah, we got to throw a grenade in that room immediately. Because ladies and gentlemen, if you can't live on 10% of your money today, how in the hell are you gonna live on it when you get 65? And God forbid that your pension investment vehicle don't do well, and at the very end of your last year of being eligible to work, and you go into retirement, God forbid that that vehicle fail or take a nosedive and your pension get depleted. What do you do then? You pay pension for 30 years and then go end up on NAU? We have a failing system that nobody not doing anything about. Nothing. So rubbing elbows with the Cruise Line Association is a good thing, only if it's for the right reasons. But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it's a bad thing. You don't need to be a well-decorated, educated person to understand the simple dynamics of an industry that solely depends on this region for survival. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand your leverage. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen. Anything that you sell, listen good. I want you to listen very good. Whether it be a car, whether it be land, whether it be jewelry, whether it be produce, anything that you sell only value as much as what someone is willing to pay. You understand that? Anything that you sell only as value as what someone is willing to pay for it. Hence the reason we have marketing. We market things so that we can sell to people, make people feel good about buying it. So please, let us pay attention to the details, to the fine print. So when we talk about all of these things that affect us, we need to be very conscious of everything around us. So when we embark on certain things, when we allow certain things to happen, we need to make sure that we understand it completely and we're willing to change it if it's not implemented right, or if it's not giving us the right results. We should be able to change it and be willing to do so without feeling fear of political mileage or looking bad. At the end of the day, if it failed, it failed. We need to fix it. We got to stop kicking the can down the road. Listen, I for a lot of people who follow anything that I say or do or whatever, you all would know that one of my greatest issues have always been fuel regulation, has always been how we consume fuel, why we consume fuel, where we consume it from, who's benefiting from, and all of those things. And years ago, when I wanted to implement a oil refinery in Cayman, one of the major factors were trying to educate people and bring people up to speed on what exactly it meant to have a refinery in the Cayman Islands, its environmental impacts, its financial impact, everything that went around putting this thing in place. We tried to make sure that the public was properly informed, right? And it was 100% emission free, so it was environmentally friendly. The problem is that when you consume fossil fuel, that in itself has an unenvironmental friendly element, right? However, we couldn't sidestep the fact that that's how we generate energy. So regardless if I put a refinery here or if we use product from a refinery in the Middle East, it didn't matter. We still had to burn refined fuel to generate our core energy. That was, and we still do it today. Now, again, one of the reasons I wanted to do that is because I wanted us to control the price at least to Cayman, and then expand to the region. We could have set up a proper model in Cayman that could have been implemented in Jamaica and other Caribbean islands that would have been able to have price control for themselves. We know that Petrojam in Jamaica have their own refinery, but they feed stock from their crude come from a region in which is controlled by the people who drive the cost. So then they don't control the cost. They only produce a product locally. Now, again, the reason I say all of that is that during that period of wanting to put a refinery here, there was a lot of research that went on environmentally, scientifically, and regionally, because we need to know that this was the proper place for that particular modular plant. So I learned a lot in regards to carbon footprints, carbon credits, CO2 gases. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, there is something that's happening in our world right now that a lot of people don't realize, and I'm going to explain it to you all right now. And I can tell you the reason why I can explain this to you all because largely because all I do is read and all I do is watch these seminars and different things that are happening, right? Now, what I will tell you is this, and I made some notes of it when I was reading about it last night. The carbon credits has been around for a long time. The problem is that people don't understand what it really meant. Now, if you look on Google and you look at a lot of different products, there is a carbon there's a carbon impact percentage that's in there in the fine print. So for instance, what they're implementing now is where you get carbon credits for your very existence. And I think the average human being, and I stand corrected when it comes to the numbers and the percentages, but I know there was a survey done that is saying that the average human being has a total of 2 tons of carbon emission that they impact personally based on what they eat, what they drive, different things, right? And they were saying that that would increase up to 9,000 if we didn't slow down certain things. So what they've done is that they are gradually developing a carbon credit system. So some credit cards as well, when you swipe it, depending on the product you buy, on how that product was made, where it came from, what carbon impact you got. If you take a flight, if you go on like a airline right now and you book a flight on Google, say from Cayman to London, it tells you how much fuel that plane burns and how much carbon and how much impact that has in terms of carbon emissions. So, and that goes to a credit system. So, so you realize and think about this, ladies and gentlemen, right? You think about this. If they fully implement a carbon credit system and then say, and then implement, and then pass a law that says every individual is only allowed to burn X amount of carbon or have X amount of carbon impact per year, per year, and everything you buy with your credit card, debit card, whatever you buy, whatever you participate in, goes into an international database that says Mario Rankin burn X amount this month, and then he's on forecast to burn X amount. He's going to exceed his limit, then you pay a fine because that's what's coming, Or you be restricted, which means if if you've exceeded your carbon impact that is allowed to you by law, you realize then you can't travel, right? That means you can't get on a plane because you can no longer exceed any more than you have already been allotted, right? Think about this. I want you all to understand this. I know it sounds a little bit complicated and a little bit gibberish, right? But listen to me. Let me break it down in layman terms. Carbon credits was designed to initiate and implement people to reduce their carbon footprint, which means you can get paid for carbon credits. But now they're changing the system where carbon credits is going to become an allowance. That's why I start to see it on bills. I start seeing it on items. You go to the grocery store and you buy like a vegan item, you'll see on the vegan item 1.3% carbon. And that's a credit because you're not eating meat, you're not eating anything that had to be farmed. So think about this. If this system hypothetically or theoretically is implemented that says you are allowed, and I'll speak hypothetically again. I know it's a lot of hypotheticals, but listen. Let's say you allowed 100,000 carbon credits, carbon emissions for the year, and you take 4 flights for the year. 4 flights, you already burned 70% of that. Then you go and you buy some product online or you go and eat in a restaurant. These things are, and every time you swipe that card, goes to your carbon contribution, and then let's just say mid-year you've exceeded your 100,000. You can't travel no more. You're not gonna eat no steak for the rest of the year. I'm not really a steak lover. And there are a lot of items that you can't get. In fact, you have to pretty much be non-existent to not burn carbon. So you realize that system. So now, when I say all of that, I start watching international markets immediately when I read in these scenarios, right? I don't know how many of you pay attention to Bill Gates. Bill Gates is now the largest farmland owner in America, probably in the world now. I don't know, right? He's been buying farmland like you won't believe. So what produces, what stores carbon? You want to know what stores carbon? Trees. Trees store carbon. So a billionaire impact on the carbon belt will far exceed me and yours. And now they buying all of these tracts of land. And guess what? This week gone, well, we're in Monday now, but last week, guess who bought 500,000 acres of forest and open land? Guess. JP Morgan. Why the largest banking institution in the world buying land? Farmland. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you there is something taking place. I don't know conspiracy theories. I just looking at the facts. I following the facts. So when you see institutions like JP Morgan and Bill Gates buying up hundreds and thousands of acres of farmland and forests and woodland areas, it's because they are building their carbon credits. They're building their carbon credits. People don't understand what's taking place. So that right there, the fact that the two of them doing that tells me that what I'm reading about the possibility about all of us being limited to a certain amount of carbon a year, and it's gonna essentially cripple our mobility and how we do things, tells me that it's true. Why in the world Bill Gates at 70 years old need more farmland than he can imagine? Well, he got children, right? Why J.P. Morgan bought 500,000 acres of land in the U.S.? Why? I know they didn't buy it to go camping on. They didn't buy it because they're hungry. They didn't buy it because they need some space to live on. No, we know they didn't do that. So we got to pay attention. We have to pay attention to our surroundings. We got to stop being gullible. We got to stop being idle. We have to pay attention to what's going on. So here in Cayman, we have a utility company that has essentially done whatever they want to do. Yeah, we have off reg, but do we really have off reg? I mean, we've seen something happen just recently with this consumer committee foolishness that they formed. I don't even know why they wasted time doing that. But anyway, at the end of the day, we have a utility company that charge us to build a grid, charge us to maintain a grid, and then charge us to distribute per kilowatt on the said grid. Hold on. And the best one yet, the grid is on our land. So we pay to build the grid, we pay to maintain the grid, and we pay to get distribution from the grid. Then, to add insult to injury, CUC then opens up a subsidiary company called DataLink, which then charges every other utility and everybody else who want to use the grid millions of dollars every year and pocket the money. But the grid is on our land. We pay to build the grid. We pay to maintain the grid. We also pay to use the grid. But yet everybody else that use it goes to the utility company. How? Please, can someone tell me how that makes any sense? Tell me. Because it don't. And then to put a cherry on the top of this cake, the utility company charges 100% pass-through costs for all petroleum products that they use to generate the very current that they charge us per kilowatt hour to be transferred and distributed on a grid that we buy and pay and own for. I don't understand this. Nobody can tell me that something not fundamentally wrong with that. But yet, somehow, we continue to do it every year in and every year out. Now, I can understand if we've taken the pension money and bought CUC. If we bought CUC, then the money from DataLink comes to us. Then the money paid to maintain the grid stays with us. The money to build back the grid if something happened to it stays with us. It's a sovereignty of the state. So please, can somebody tell me why we haven't bought CUC yet? Because we technically own it now without having it in writing. We build the grid on our land. We pay to build the grid on our land. We maintain the grid on our land. You understand? We pay for distribution of the grid. We pay for all the fuel that causes the distribution on the grid. Come on, man. Come on, man. We might as well just buy this thing and call it ours. What is stopping the 5 or 6 or how many pension providers combining their effort and going and buying Fortis? What's stopping them? It's a publicly traded company. How you think Fortis bought it? Just go buy them. Just go buy it. What, we need a bunch of duly elected politicians to tell us we can buy it? No. Take the pension money that don't belong to you and go and buy Fortis. Go buy Water Authority, go buy Water Company, go buy Cheers and Digicels, go buy Flow, go buy them all, as far as I'm concerned. Can you imagine if we bought CUC as a sovereignty? The government can waive the duties. The government can then waive the duties on fuel, which is 50 cents a gallon. You want to know what that equates to? Try 45 million, 50 million gallons a year. Yeah, at 50 cents. That's how much money we'll be saving. So you times that by 50 cents, and that's the number we're saving. And what do you do with that money? Tell me what you do with that money. You then put that money into dividend checks to the people who own CUC, who happens to be the people. Anyway, at the end of the day, if we want to truly spread wealth amongst our people, we need to start making the decisions in order to do so. There's nothing stopping our pension providers to buy in CUC. They could buy Fortis out tomorrow morning by stroke of a pen. Buy them. Let's own it. You can put as much poles as you want on my land then for free. But you're not putting none on my land because it's not mine. If you put the pole on my land, it's mine. You got to pay for it when it's owned by a foreign entity. I'm sorry. We got to stop being so complacent in this country. We don't need to write an energy policy. No, we don't need an energy policy. We just need to make sure that we regulate fuel, to make sure that we getting fair prices to our consumers, and we need to make sure that we buy Fortis and own it, and or take the grid. Either way, we need to put our foot in the sand and draw a line and say, this is it. We ain't taking no more of this. Because as opposed to going into any legal ramifications with breach of contract with CUC, just buy the thing out. Let's own it, and then we can shred that document. We can take that contract and burn it because then it always. Come on, man. We can't be this stupid. I hate using that term, but boy, I mean, how else can I size up what it is we doing? You know, I see all of these PR every time I open the paper now, full page ad from CUC. You never seen that before. Why you seeing it now? I don't know. Sounds like a guilty conscience to me. And I don't care what nobody wants to say. I don't care what nobody want to say. Anything that positively happening over there now from a PR standpoint is a direct result of the pressure I put on them over the years. I can tell you that straight up. Now, I don't toot my own horn ever. I can tell you all this, right? I come in here all the time, even on Radio Cayman in different places, different platforms, and I've always maintained the same narrative. I've never changed. I never used it for any personal gains or any personal things that I go through. I never. So there's no ulterior motive here, other than to get the best other than get what's best for this country and the people in it. End of story. I don't care who called Cayman home, but we need to be able to call Cayman home before we can offer it to anyone else. When you get on an airplane, the first thing they tell you, put your mask on first and then assist the child. Because if you don't put your mask on, you mightn't be able to assist the child. That's the problem we have here. We've never assisted ourselves first. We've assisted everybody else and everything else. And then expect Caymanians to fall in line and be obedient. And then we develop this atrocious perception that we lazy and don't want work. When everything that exists today came off the backs of our forefathers who went to sea. But yet we lazy all of a sudden. We're not good enough all of a sudden. Come on, man. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on in our environment, in our country. So nobody can trick us if we keep ourselves aware. Now, you know, I know that in the last couple of months, in fact, the last year, you know, coming on this show on a regular basis has been a challenge for me. And for many reasons, right? And I still do my best, pick up what I got to do, and I come, and I try to keep it, above board. I try to keep it consistent, and I think I have done that. The problem is that because politicians think that when you talk about something that they are failing at or that they could do better, they think you're criticizing them. They think that you're taking a shot at them. They think that you're being critical of the situation, and then they turn and they shun you, and they try to alienate you, and then they victimize you, not realizing that if they just listen to the content, they just listen to the ideas, they just listen to some of the methodologies and say, gee, you know what? Regardless of what anybody may think, or especially what Mario may think, let's see if we can get some of these things done. Nobody in Cayman can tell me that it's not in our best interest to own CUC. I can understand if we had to go borrow money to buy it. We don't. We got $3 billion in pension money, something that they take from us by law, by compulsory. How in the world we have a law that tell us we got to contribute 5% and our employer got to contribute 5%, a total of 10% into a fund that we have absolutely no control over? It's by law that we contribute it, but there's nothing that stipulates that we control it. So listen, we need to take some of that pension money right now and go and buy CUC and any other entity that is running as a compulsory item in this country. Hey, let me tell you something. I know that people always talk about, oh, well, it's not good business of government going business to compete with competitors, with people. What are you talking about? What do you think Cynical is? Cynical is an insurance company now. Thank God Chris has expanded it for other people and turned it into a normal insurance company so they can reduce rates so people can actually afford it. What do you think a hospital is? Then we got Dr. Shetty who came in here. Imagine now, right? Dr. Shetty, I don't got anything against nobody. Dr. Shetty came in here as a medical tourism, and now he's building a branch in every district, competing with our local hospital. Come on, man. How in the world Dart never asked HSA to build a branch down by them? Why Dart never asked Charles Russell to build a supermarket in Commander Bay instead of the Fosters? I don't got anything against the Fosters. I love them all. But you don't think they got enough? You don't think it's time that we hand the baton off? You don't think it's time that a small supermarket operator like Charles Russell Jr., you don't think he deserved the opportunity to have a big box store too? And despite of everything, he's still moving along. So we got to commend him. So why, if Jack Doak was right, but who are we developing for? Why you never call Charles Russell and put him where Foster's is down by Commander Bay? Why? Oh, I know why. He not bougie enough. That's why. And you all could have payrolled everything he needed. You built the building. I know Foster didn't build the building. You all built the building. And now we know that there's another big plaza getting ready to be built up at the East West Arteria by Alti and them. Yeah, they're getting ready to build a big plaza up there and move Foster's and that, move L. Thompson and that, build housing and bigger. Why? I'm just letting you all know what's going on. You remember the time I said, go and look at all of the blocking parcels in and around that gazetted road, the east-west arterial road. Go and look at all of the land, all the way to Frankstown where the road is supposed to end. Go look at all the land around it. Go and look and see who bought it. Go look at the timeline when they bought it, and go and look at when the road was gazetted. And then you find out, who in power. Jamal, can we take a quick pause? Yeah. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I had to take a quick pause. I had a very important phone call I've been waiting on from last week, and I had to take it because if I'd missed that, I don't know if I would have been able to get that person back on the line because obviously getting ready to wrap up the show now. But everything that I've said previously is things that I focus on all the time. And I can continue to fight the fight. I can continue to try to get what's best for Cayman. Right now, I'm involved with a project that we're building some storage in Jamaica for fuel, and I got Cayman allocated in there. And had nothing to do with nobody here. It's just because that's who I am as a person. I working for the best interest of Cayman at all times. That aside, I want to remind everybody that we have Jet Around coming up in the Easter weekend, and we got over $20,000 in cash and prizes. You know, we got international riders coming in. It's going to be a great event. So, you know, we encourage everybody to come out and watch and support it. I know it's on the Easter weekend. People will already be kind of chilling and having a good time, eating some good Caymanian food on the Easter weekend. But yeah, just letting you all know that Jet Around is on the Easter weekend. The race will be Easter Monday. So thank you all for watching Word of Mouth. Today is Monday for those of you who made it to work and for those of you who didn't make it to work. You know, God bless, and we'll see you on Wednesday morning.
We got to break Sariba up. Sariba is a cartel.
We have to own our grid because we paid for it. You had it too long. That's number one. We need to control the purchasing of fuel because we pay for it. We should be in charge of buying it. The fuel companies, you better buckle up too. Jackson Point Pipeline have to be reverted back to the ownership of the country. Oh, Mario, you can't tell them how to operate their business. Well, yes, we can. Having this idea that you're going to impose what's best because of what the law tells you can do will cause an uprising in this country that you've never seen before. My children are going to be saddled with the debt of a billionaire so that he can have his name printed on everything we got around here. Because let me tell you something, this is Dart Island.